Alright, in this video we're going to use Excel to create a frequency distribution, and we are also going to create a histogram and a frequency polygon to go along with this. So first things first, let's go ahead and call up a data set. Now here's a complete data set, and what we want to do for this data set is we want to create a frequency distribution. So the first thing I want to do is start by sorting my columns so that I can see exactly what my minimum value is and my maximum value is, so I can determine what the range is. So I'm going to create a new column and I'm going to call it sort. And then I'm going to go ahead and highlight all of these, and I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it right here, just the numbers. And then I'm going to come over here to sort and filter, and I'm going to sort smallest to largest. And we're going to continue with the current selection. I only want the one column that's highlighted, and now it has been sorted from least to greatest. Now the next thing that I want to do is determine what the range is, because that is going to help me determine what I'm going to use as far as my class sizes. So in this case, the range is going to be 159, which is the greatest value in the list, and we're going to subtract from that the smallest value, which is 78, and that's going to be equal to 81. And we'll use the range to help us determine what the class widths are, or class intervals. And what we're going to do for this particular problem is use 5 classes in order to create this frequency histogram. So for this example, we use 5 classes. So the next step is to go ahead and divide the range by 5. Okay, so the next step will be to go ahead and find the class width, and we're going to find the division between 81. So we'll take 81 and divide that by 5, and that is equal to 16.2, and we will round up to 17. So 17 is the class width. And from there we're going to determine what our intervals are, or the class widths. Alright, we're going to start with the first class starting at a lower limit of 78. So we use the smallest value in the data set to be the lower limit of the first class. Okay, so we're going to use 78 to be the lower limit of the first class. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we are going to add 17 to that to get the next lower limit. So if we add 17 right here, we'll have 78 plus 17, and that'll give us 95 for the next lower limit, which means that the upper limit in the first class is going to be 94. So my first class goes from 78 to 94. I'm going to go ahead and add 17 to the 95 again to get the next lower limit in my grouping. And I'll keep doing this in both columns. I'll add 17 over here to the 94 so that I can get my next upper limit. So 94 plus 17 will be 111. And I will do that all the way down, and I will end up with this next class will be 112 to 127. Sorry, that should be 128, not 127. And then the next class will be 129 to 145. And then finally my fifth class will be 146 to 163. Now this should be sufficient to cover all of the data in the data set. And if you go back and you remember that the greatest data value is 159 and the least data value is 78, it makes perfect sense. And now we're going to have to count frequencies. And this is where it's very easy to make a mistake. You want to go ahead and you want to look at your frequency values in this particular data set. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and begin and count and find the frequencies in each class. So in this first class, we're going to be looking at 78 to 94. So I come over here to my data set and I look at each one of these and I say, okay, which one of these is going to give me a value between 78 and 94? And I look at this one, and this is the only one that is between 78 and 94, so I have one in my frequency column. Now I'm going to look at 95 to 111. So once again, we're going to look at 95 to 111, and let's change the color, and we'll go with this one, this one, this one, and we note that we now have 5 in this column. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in that one. Next, we're going to go to 112 to 128. So we'll look at this. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. So there's 26 in that one. So let's go ahead and write that out. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 26. So let's look at this next one. And we're going to be between 129 and 145. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So there's 14 of them there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 14. And then we're going to go ahead and look for 146 to 163. And that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now the number of data values that I have in my data set for this is 50 data values. And I need to make sure that everything that's right here sums up to 50. So let's see, I've got 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. That's 45, and then 50. So this is my setup. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the first two columns in my frequency distribution. And I'm going to go ahead and do that in Excel. So over here in Excel, I can just go ahead and pick where I'm going to do this. And I'm going to insert a table. And this table is simply going to have two columns, and I'm going to put 6 rows in it. So we'll start this by labeling it as class, and then in the next column we'll go ahead and label frequency. And notice that I'll do a apostrophe, and I'm going to insert an italicized lowercase f to represent my frequency. Okay, you've seen here where I've gone ahead and created the class column and the frequency column. What I'm going to do now is go ahead and format it and put borders around it. I will right click this, I'll go down to format cells, and then I'm going to go ahead and click in the borders to make sure that they all have that formatting. And you'll now notice that I have my frequency distribution. The next thing that I want to do is go ahead and add the midpoints, the relative frequencies, and the cumulative frequency columns to this thing. So first off, I need to find out what the midpoints are between and for each one of these classes, so I will add that as MID PT for midpoint. And let's just go ahead and spell it out. And over here in this next column, as I said, I'm going to be adding a relative frequency, and I'll just call that REL period, FREQ period, and then in the next column will be the cumulative frequency. So let's go ahead and talk about the midpoint. I'm going to find the midpoint by simply adding the upper and lower limit of each class and dividing by 2. So for this first class, or for the first class, I'm simply going to take 78 and add to that 94, and then I'm going to divide by 2, and I'll get, and that'll be 86 for this one. And I'm going to do that for each one of these rows to get my midpoints. And just to make sure that you're following and understanding exactly what I'm doing, like I said, I would take the lower limit of the first class, add to that the upper limit of the first class, and then I would divide that by 2, which is going to give me 86. And I do that for all 5 of the classes. Now I want to go ahead and find the relative frequency. So what I do for the relative frequency is take the frequency from each class and divide by the total number. For example, in this first class, I have a frequency of 1. And I know that I have 50 items, so the relative frequency will be 1 over 50. When I divide 1 by 50, what I want to do is go ahead and create that as a decimal, which in this case will be 0.02. I don't necessarily have to put the 0 in front of it, but for the purposes of uniformity with other math classes, we'll go ahead and do that. For the second class, this one's going to be 5 over 50, so when I divide that out, I'm going to get a decimal that is equal to 0.0 or 0.1. And I'm going to do that, and I'm going to go ahead and write it as 0.10. And I'm going to do that for all 5 of the classes, and I'm going to put them in the table. So right over here, we'll go ahead and put 0.02. We'll put 0.10. Okay, so this one is going to be 0.52. Next one down will be 0.28. The next one down will be 0.08. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that I have the correct numbers. For example, my frequency column over here, if I add all of those numbers together, I should get the total number of data values, which in this particular case is going to be 50. What I can do is I can use the summation symbol here. I can go ahead and just left click sum, and then you'll notice that when I did that, the 5 numbers above are highlighted, and if I just press the enter key, it gives me my sum. I'm going to do the same thing right here for the relative frequency column. I'm going to go ahead and left click sum. I'm going to press enter and get 1, and that tells me that my relative frequency is correct for each particular class. If the sum of the frequencies add up to the total number of data values, I'm good. If the sum of the relative frequencies add up to 1, I'm good. And now we're going to go ahead and find the cumulative frequency, which means that I'm just going to look at the frequencies and I'm going to simply add them together. For example, the frequency here is 1, so the cumulative frequency is 1. And then I'm going to take that 1 and I'm going to add it to this frequency right here, which is 5, so I end up with 6. The next one will be 6 plus 26, which will give me 32. The next one will be 32 plus 14, which will give me 46. And then the next one will be 46 plus 4, which will give me 50. And you'll notice that this last cell has to equal to the total number of data values that I have, and it does. And so what I'm going to do now is go ahead and continue my formatting of my table. Right, I'm going to highlight the whole thing. I'm going to right click, come down to format cells, and I want to make sure that I have every single one of these shaded in, and I'll left click that and I'm good to go. So, and I just want to have the formatting that you would normally see in the textbook. So right here what I'm going to do is I'm going to left click insert, come over here to symbols, and I want to left click and insert the sigma symbol, which means summation of, and that will go into this particular cell right here, and I'm going to put a lowercase f in italics so that it looks like some summation of the frequencies. And then I'll take off the italics, I'll put the equal sign, and then I'm going to go ahead and align this to the right side so we can see that we have the summation of frequencies is equal to 50. And I want to do the same thing over here and do the summation of the relative frequency so it will be equal to 1. Now, the thing about this one is I don't have a symbol just for relative frequency, and the relative frequency can be established as an f over n. So what I'm going to do is just copy this cell, I'm going to paste it in here, and then I'm going to go in there and I'm going to open a parentheses, and then I'm going to use the divide symbol, use an n, and then close the parentheses. And now I have sigma fn, which means relative f over n, which means relative frequency. And I'll go ahead and format these so it looks just like the rest of my table. Now, you don't have to do this. This is just a little something extra, and I do that just to make it look good. All right, now I have my table and I'm good to go. The next thing that I want to do is go ahead and create a frequency histogram. Alright, the next thing we want to do is go ahead and create the frequency histogram. Now, there's a number of different ways to do this, but I'm going to show you a quick and dirty way to do it to make it as easy as possible. So what we want to do is we want to left click insert, just pick some cell over here, it doesn't really matter where it is, and we're going to left click insert, and then we're going to come over here to where it says charts, and I want to insert a column chart. And I'm going to left click this and come down to more column charts. It doesn't really matter, I can just select the 2D column and it's going to insert that. But in order for this to work perfectly, what I want to do is go ahead and select my data first, which is going to be these first two columns. Left click insert, come over to the chart, left click that, and you'll notice that I have what's called a frequency histogram. Unfortunately, it's not perfect because a frequency histogram is not supposed to have any separation between the bars. So what I want to do is double click one of the bars and you'll see that this opens up over here. And I want to take this gap width and I want to take it down to 0. And you'll notice that my frequency histogram now has become a full-on, exactly like the textbook will have you do it without any gaps between any of the bars. Now, I can go ahead and modify this if I want, and I can change the title here if I want to, and I can just say histogram, or I can change it to whatever it is that I want. For example, in this case, this is text messages sent, so we'll just call it text messages sent. And if I want to, I can label the X and the Y axes, and I can do that by adding in right here. I can say axis titles, notice that they pop up, and if I left click that, then I can just go ahead and double click in there and I can go ahead and change it, and this would be the number of or I should say the frequency of texts, and this would be the number sent, and there we go. And so it's done. Alright, so the next thing that we want to do is create the frequency polygon. Now, there's a number of different ways to do this also, but what I want to do is show you once again another shortcut. Now, the frequency polygon is going to be a little different than how we created this. You'll notice that when we created the histogram, we used both of these columns, and the class is the x-axis and the frequency is going to be the y-axis. So we're going to do that again, but this time we want to use the midpoint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and highlight and copy and just paste it right down here. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the frequency column. I'm going to highlight it, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it right down here. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 17 from 86 here The reason I'm doing that is because 17 is the class width. If I take 86 and I subtract 17, I will get the midpoint of the class that would be lower than that first class between 78 and 94. Now, the reason that I'm doing that is because frequency polygons are supposed to intersect the x-axis every time they start, and they're supposed to intersect the x-axis every time they end. And there would be 0 in this particular column because there are no values in that first range, or in that range. And then I'm going to do the same thing down here. I'm going to add 17 to 154, and I will get 171. And then I'm also going to put a 0 here since there would be no values in there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to highlight or select all of those. I'm going to left click insert. Then I'm going to come over here to charts. And I want to left click this one, and I want to use this particular chart right here. And you'll see that we have now created our frequency polygon. I can go ahead and edit the title. And I'm just simply going to type in frequency polygon. But you can type in whatever you want based upon what the particular questions are calling. Notice that this frequency polygon will intersect the x-axis here and here.